Okay, good evening. The first thing as an introduction to what we're going to be studying tonight, as an overall introduction to the shiurim that are going on, since today is the yahrzeit, the day of the passing of the Arizal, so therefore I'm just going to speak in a brief overview of the life of the Arizal, which actually was a very short life. By 38 he passed away. And the Arizal was born to his father, Rab Shlomo Luri Ashkenazi. And when he was 8 years old, he was orphaned from his father, and by his father's passing, and his mother sent him to a school to his uncle in Cairo, where he should study Torah. And that's where he studied about 30 years. Over the course of 30 years, he studied Torah there. And in the year 1570 in English, he relocated to Tzvas with his family, and this is where he founded the Kabbalah school, the real Kabbalah school. The Kabbalah school, the way the Arizal understood Kabbalah, and he had many students. And this began the movement, the Kabbalah movement of the Arizal. The Arizal himself did not write his teachings. Rab Chaim Vital, his very devoted and close student, wrote his teachings, and they are referred to today in Kabbalah, they're referred to as Eitz Chaim and Pri Eitz Chaim, the tree of life and the fruit of the tree of life. And it really encompasses commentaries on Torah. There are many different svarim of the Arizal. There's Likutei Torah, Taimi, Mitzvahs, on Chumash, on the Torah itself, the written law, and then there is about the worlds and the chain of creation. So this is included in Eitz Chaim, in Pri Eitz Chaim, and many concepts that we have today based on Kabbalah are based on these writings. In fact, Rab Chaim Vital himself also wanted that after he passes away, he gave an oath that everything should be buried and nothing should be left. But there was a way that the great Jewish leaders later came around, and they were able to allow the publishing, and this is what we have today. These are volumes and volumes of a series called Eitz Chaim and Pri Eitz Chaim. Getting back to the Arizal after in the 2 years, the 2.5 years that Arizal was in Tzvat, this is from the year 1570 till 1572. The Arizal built up, as mentioned earlier, and taught Kabbalah, and there are many teachings from the Arizal in Kabbalah. And he left a very big impression, not only on Kabbalah, but also customs that are based on Kabbalah. Jewish customs today that sometimes we're not even aware of it, but they're actually in the Siddur, in the prayer book, and when we research it, we realize that they are based on Kabbalah. That's the only reason we say it. Like, for example, the Ona B'Cheach. The Ona B'Cheach is considered the 42 words. It is in Kabbalah, it's a very special name. It's considered Shem Mab, the name of 42. In the Zohar it says that this is what the world was created with. It's many different things about this name. And it was actually written by a sage called Rab Nechunya ben Akona. He's the one that wrote up this prayer, Ona B'Choach. It is said different times in the day. It is said in the morning before the prayer, when we speak about the sacrifices. It is said before the Chodedi. It is said before going to sleep, reading the Shema, before retiring for bed. It is said during the Sfiras HaOmer, when we count the Omer, the 49 days. And in general, Chassidus explains that the concept of Ona B'Cheach is basically signifies elevation. It is a name, a holy name, that relates and symbolizes elevation from below to above. Elevation of the soul, elevation of worlds, and therefore when it comes before the Chodedi, before we greet the Shabbos, we say the Ona B'Cheach, because this is when all the worlds elevate to a higher level. The same thing before going to sleep, the soul goes back up. The same thing by Sfira. Recounting the Omer is refining personal character traits. It's also the same idea. So this is basically, the Ona B'Cheach is used several times in the daytime, every day, in the prayers. Towards the end of it, in the last few years, the Rabbi Yosef Karei, who was the codifier of the Jewish law, he wrote the Jewish law, so he became a mechutin. In English, there's no real word for it. A mechutin means that their children married each other. So Rabbi Yosef Karei's son married the Arizal's daughter. And when Rabbi Yosef Karei was very overjoyed, he came back from the engagement, and he came back home, and he said to his wife, my wife, what should I say? Should I talk about the secrets and the reasons of Torah and the commandments and how much knowledge I just received by this meal from the holy mouth of the Arizal? Where is there the strength of the hand of an angel to know what he knows? He is a soul from the first prophets.
Really?
Even a sage in the Talmud does not know what he can say, cannot say what he can say. But I'm afraid that because of the great sins and everything happening, he says this generation will not be able to endure his holiness. And that Arizal is not going to be around for long. He passed away within 2 years, and this was in 1570. He was 38 years old. It's interesting to note, speaking also about the Mezritcha Maggid, when the Mezritcha Maggid was once saying a Torah, a certain Torah, was delivering a certain lecture, Hasidic lecture. So the Alter Rebbe, Rab Shneur Zalman of Liadi, was a student of the Arizal, of the Mezritcha Maggid. So he was there. And he sees all kinds of people standing around, the students, everybody. And then he sees a young man there. He has no idea who he is. He found out later it was the Arizal. The Arizal came down as a soul and a body to the table of the Mezritcha Maggid. And he listened to the Maimer, to the discourse of the Mezritcha Maggid. Being that the Mezritcha Maggid and before him the Baal Shem Tov were the ones that continued teaching the Kabbalah and introduced it in Chassidus. So this is basically the Arizal. It's hard to say that he was the father of Kabbalah because before him came the sage Rab Shimon ben Yochai, who wrote the Zohar. So, but basically he introduced Kabbalah in a very strong way, and a very interesting quote that we have from him about learning Chassidus and Kabbalah. The Arizal says about Kabbalah, in Hebrew, mitzvah legalis zeis hachachma. It is a mitzvah and an obligation, a commandment to reveal this philosophy. The Alter Rebbe, Rab Shneur Zalman of Liadi, quotes it in the Tanya. So therefore, basically, based on this and based on teachings of the successors of the Arizal and the leaders of different Hasidic sects, beginning from the Baal Shem Tov and the Mezritcha Maggid, and then the Alter Rebbe Shneur Zalman of Liadi, and the ones that followed his successors. So they all taught us that this is a way of hastening the redemption, because at the time of the redemption, we will be learning this in a very obvious way. So therefore now we're tasting from it like Friday tasting from the Shabbos meal. So now we'll go on to learning about the Mishkan, but actually not only the sanctuary, but also the temple. We find ourselves now in the 9 days, referred to as the 9 days of mourning. There is a very interesting word. It's a little, I don't know if it's sarcastic, but it's somebody once summed up the Jewish year. So he says the Jewish year goes like this. It doesn't go through all the months, but he selects certain parts of the segments of the year. He says 7 weeks we count. The 7 weeks of Sfira, we count between Passover and Shavuos. 3 weeks we mourn. These are the 3 weeks from the siege of the wall of Jerusalem, when they broke the wall actually, the 17th of Tammuz, till Tisha B'Av, which is coming up this Shabbos. We're going to fast Sunday instead of Shabbos, but actually on the calendar, the 9th day is Shabbos. It started 3 weeks earlier. 4 weeks we blow Shofar, the month of Elul. So this is how, an interesting way, summing up different activities of the Jewish calendar. So the 9 days are basically the time that we mourn the temple. And when we look on the Jewish calendar, it's not only the first temple, but it's also the second temple. It's not only the second temple, it's also the Inquisition. It's not only the Inquisition, it's also World War I. Many things that happen on this very day. And as the Almighty has said, when the spies came back, the spies that Moses has dispatched, have come back, they came back on the night of Tisha B'Av. And they brought such a confused message for the Jewish nation that the Jewish nation cried. What are we getting into? In the giants, we're going to be fighting these giants in these countries, in the 7 countries of lands of Israel. How are we going to manage? So the Almighty said, you cried now for nothing. On this night, I'll give you what to cry about. And from then on, the troubles that the Jewish nation had are actually it's endless. I mean, all these major things that took place on Tisha B'Av, on the day of Tisha B'Av, the first temple, the second temple, the Inquisition, World War I, everything was on Tisha B'Av, and probably more things that we're not aware of. The Lubavitcher Rebbe in mid-1970s pointed to a certain medrash, a certain anthology in Medrash Tanchuma on the Parshas Tzav, in the Medrash Tanchuma and the Torah portion of Tzav, which is in Leviticus, the second portion of Leviticus. And it says over there that Yechezkel Hanavi came with an argument, with a question to the Almighty. The Almighty requested from him that he should study the dimensions of the temple. So Yechezkel said, you're asking the Jewish people to study the dimensions? It's not existing anymore, the temple. What do you want from them? And especially Yechezkel, who was in Babylon, he wasn't even in Israel. As the commentaries ask a question, how did he have a prophecy in Babylon when prophecy was designated exclusively in Israel? He was al Nahar Kvar. He was completely in a different river, in a different place altogether. Near Iraq, which is Babylon. So the Almighty answered him, when you will pay attention to the laws, to the structure of the temple, it is considered like my temple is not destroyed. Beisi eine bottle, my temple is not destroyed. And therefore by studying that, you are accomplishing building it.